All right, Krystal, what's on your radar?
Well, so on the one hand, Biden didn't really have the problem we expected him to have at last night's debate, other than some normal Bidenisms and, well, my time's up moments. He was actually relatively sharp. On the other hand, one of his other major problems was amplified. What is one of the number one justifiable complaints that Democrats make about Trump? That he lies. Well, last night, Joe put on full display his own uncomfortable relationship with the truth. Of course, this should have been readily apparent already, given that in recent weeks he invented and retold an apparently completely fabricated tale of getting arrested while trying to see Nelson Mandela. No one has yet to bother asking him about it in a debate, but I'm sure if Bernie had done something similar, they'd have given him a pass too. Am I right? But in last night's debate, time and again, rather than grappling with uncomfortable past votes and positions, he just lied. Most notably, of course, Biden once again lied about his record on Social Security. Let's watch.
And I want you just to be straight with the American people. I am saying that you have been on the floor of the Senate time and time again talking about the need to cut Social Security, Medicare, and veterans programs. Is that true or is that not true?
No, it's not true.
Well, great friend of the show, Ryan Grimm, wrote the definitive piece on this and documented how over decades Joe Biden has repeatedly sought cuts to Social Security. We can also, as Senator Sanders suggested last night, go to the YouTube and see Joe in his own words.
When I introduced the budget freeze years ago, the liberals of my party said, "It's an awful thing you're doing, Joe. You are all the programs we care about. You're freezing them. Money for the blind, the disabled, education, and so on." And my argument then is the one I make now, which is the strongest, most compelling reason to be for this amendment or an amendment. And that is that if we don't do that, all the things I care most about are going to be gone. I mean, whatever happened to that old conservative discipline about paying for what you spend? I'm up for re-election this year, and I'm going to remind everybody what I did at home, which is going to cost me politically. When I argued that we should freeze federal spending, I meant Social Security as well. I meant Medicare and Medicaid. I meant veterans benefits. I meant every single solitary thing in the government.
But there was so much more on that bad bankruptcy bill that Joe now swears he barely had anything to do with, and he certainly didn't help write. Here is Republican Senator Orrin Hatch thanking Biden for helping to write the bill.
Senators Biden and Carper have worked tirelessly for years on this legislation, and they've taken some tough votes to get it done, and I admire them for it. You would expect senators from Delaware, which is the corporate state, to do their best to get this bill through, but they did.
There you go. On abortion, Joe claimed to be a longtime pro-choice champion. Well, here is a press release from Joe, literally bragging about being one of the Senate's most conservative Democrats because of his stance on the terrible balanced budget amendment, which would have, again, forced Social Security cuts, but also bragging about his support of anti-choice legislation. On the rather significant issue of the Iraq War, Biden continued his embarrassing parade of lies. He still insists that he thought by voting for the war, he was somehow voting against the war.
They were, in fact, producing nuclear weapons or weapons of mass destruction. They were not. And what's the first thing that happened when we got elected? The President Obama turned to me and said, get those troops out of there. I was responsible for getting 150,000 combat troops out of Iraq. I admitted 14 years ago was a mistake to have trusted him. And I'm prepared to compare my foreign policy credentials up against my friend here on any day of the week and every day of the week.
Well, let's start off.
He also continues to lie about how quickly he turned on that war. Well, after the war began, he continued to stand by his vote, as you can also easily verify by going to the YouTube. On issue after issue, rather than owning up to what has been a lifelong record of atrocious judgment, Biden chose instead to shade, embellish, and flat out lie. He claimed he was responsible for the Paris Climate Accord. He was not. Remember when he took credit for the CFPB with Elizabeth Warren literally standing right there? He said he supports ending all new fracking. He does not. He claimed to have long supported the $15 minimum wage. The evidence, highly questionable. There were so many moments that did Biden started trending on Twitter, followed by lying Biden. The long list I've just detailed isn't even close to complete. The whole thing honestly just makes me sad. Democrats have put Biden in a position to win the nomination because they believe that nothing but beating Trump matters, and they believe Biden is most likely to defeat him. They buy into Biden's pitch that he will restore the soul of the nation. They threw all in for him during a remarkable span of a very short period in which the entire Democratic establishment and media lined up behind him without having ever subjected him to a real period of sustained scrutiny on his record, his plans, or his pattern of lies. The Sanders team pulled their punches, and they didn't get the job done either. And so now here we stand with voters just starting to be reminded of some of these issues which are in fact massive liabilities in a matchup against Trump, issues which the right-wing media and Trump will not hesitate to use. You can go ahead and follow the Trump War Room or RNC Twitter accounts to see how it's being done already. And so once again, the media has lied to the American people about something of vital importance: which candidate is actually up to the job of beating Donald Trump. But that's not even the worst part. We are in a crisis at the moment, and one of the greatest failings of this administration has in fact been that they've lied to the American people repeatedly. We can't look to this president for accurate information about tests or guidance or economic reality. That lack of trust feeds fear on one hand and is actively destructive to public health on the other. New polling shows that now even our response to coronavirus has become a partisan issue, with Republicans taking their cues from conservative media, which has mostly taken their cues from Trump, saying, oh, this is all a fake Democrat issue. That means that according to NBC News Wall Street Journal polling, in instance after instance, Republicans are much less likely than Democrats to modify their lives in response to coronavirus. While 61% of Democrats say that they have stopped going to large public gatherings, only 30% of Republicans say the same. Getting coronavirus to own the libs. Great work there, guys. When there is no trust at the top, people just pick their own preferred set of facts. Do Democrats really want to trade one leader you can't trust for another? I'm not sure the public will care that much about the difference between mendacity and senility. And you know what? I'm old enough to remember when Democrats tried running a different electability candidate the public didn't trust against Donald Trump. Spoiler alert, it didn't work out so well. And Sagar, this is just like the beginning of the things that he didn't tell the truth about. I mean, the Simpson Bowles Commission, right. He shaded the truth about thing after thing after thing. Like every time there was a challenge to his record, he just lied and picked the answer that he preferred.
It was amazing. I mean, he does it over and over again, and he's had this pattern throughout. And his competitors are the ones who let him get away with it, frankly.
Yeah,
I mean, Bernie kind of held his feet to the fire on Social Security. He made a few stands, but Biden has been doing this for so long. I mean, Elizabeth Warren lets him get away with the bankruptcy thing. Yeah,
and let him do it.
With the CFPB. I mean, he's basically just been lying about his record almost since he began running for president, and none of the other Democrats really had what it took in order to call him out. And this is the hubris that he has on this is, don't mistake it. It starts from A, his career, but B, that he could get away with the things like Hunter Biden and not a single person would call him out for it. Nobody on the stage, not Bernie, not Elizabeth Warren, not anybody, except, Andrew Yang, I think, was the only guy who,
said
tepidly said, like, yeah, I wouldn't allow my son to do that. That's how you get away with these things. It builds your confidence that you can get away with blatant things that screw people over, and then you can lie about your record. The media won't call you out on it, and most of the other candidates won't either.
Yeah, Andrew Yang, who's now endorsed him, by the way.
Right.
So there you go. I mean, I do think it also exposes the Democrats' hypocrisy on this issue. Once again, you can't run like a moral campaign against Donald Trump if you yourself are doing some of the things that you're criticizing him for. How's Joe Biden going to stand up on a stage and say, this man's a pathological liar, he's not being straight with you, you can't trust him in a crisis, and then turn around and tell some story about getting arrested trying to see Nelson Mandela that is just completely fabricated, that he gets fact-checked on and ultimately has to walk back. His version of the reality of the story is he got separated from his companions at the airport.
Right.
I mean, it's just radically different from what actually
many times, I guess,
happened. But Democrats don't actually care about the lies. They just care it's not their guy in there telling the lies. They don't actually care about the civility, because look at Joe Biden when he yells at a union worker and curses him out and calls him a horse's ass and whatever. They're like, oh, this is the best moment he's ever had on the campaign trail. They're just mad it's not their guy in there, throwing elbows and using the coarse language. So exposes their hypocrisy on all of this sort of civility politics as well.
And we see all of that. And what I really find so striking with Biden, it's not just the lies, it's the lack of lessons learned. I think that is why I keep returning to, because it's so shocking to me to see somebody in the year 2020 defending how everything happened with 2008 and the bailouts, being like, oh, no, everything was fine. It's like, what? Like, where do you think this whole thing came from? Trump, I mean, the moment that we are living in today, the anger of millions of Americans, how did it all start? It was because of you, all the conditions that you set. And he has the gall to go up there and to say, no, everything was fine. And not only that, everything I did was perfectly okay. And the bad things I did, I didn't do those.
That stretch of the debate was really jaw-dropping, because I think that's the first time in any of these debates we've really had a full out over that seminal moment in American history, which maybe more than anything else laid the groundwork for Donald Trump and for where we are in this particular moment of politics. Now, I thought Bernie missed a big opportunity there, frankly, because he didn't point out that, look, on the one hand, you bailed out Wall Street and you did virtually nothing for anyone else. That was the problem. That was the real issue, is that it showed where the priorities of society really lie. And we see it now, right? We see $1.5 trillion injected into the stock market. I mean, the one area that Washington and society has been able to get their act together to do anything on has been with respect to the freaking stock market. Meanwhile, workers are having to fight to even get paid sick leave. It's absolutely pathetic. And that was all laid bare in the financial crisis. It has direct applicability to today and the way that this will be responded to and is being responded to. And it has direct applicability because it laid the groundwork for the moment that we find ourselves in right now.
There's just a total mismatch to the moment, and it will have very devastating consequences if he's elected to office.
Indeed. All right. Looking forward to your radar. That's next.